It's the battle of the ages, Apple and Samsung, iPhone 14 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra. The iPhone is around 5 months old now, and the S23 Ultra was just announced. In this video, we won't dive into specs too much, but talk about the experience and how I use my devices. If you're down for that type of content, hit subscribe down below. Closing in on $250. Would love to have you there. Let's start with the price. The 14 Pro Max starts at $1099 for 128 gigabytes of storage, whereas the S22 Ultra starts at 256 gigabytes of storage for $1,200. If you want to match the storage size, the iPhone is actually the same price at $1,200. Typically, Samsung has great trade-in offers to bring that price down, but this year the trade-ins are pretty lackluster. However, they're pretty much on pace with what Apple historically has given you for your trade-in too, for what it's worth. Overall, you can get the iPhone 14 Pro Max cheaper with less space, but honestly, 128 gigabytes is not enough for a modern phone. So for me, the price is going to be a wash. They're the same price. In the hand, the iPhone Pro Max feels like a big solid brick. It's a bit heavier than the S23 and it's more squared off. And I gotta be honest, without a case, the iPhone 14 Pro Max isn't comfortable to hold. I'm not sure if it's the squared off edges or what. Even in landscape, I have a tough time with it. The S23 Ultra has a slight curve on the display, which I personally find enjoyable, but it can feel slippery at times. Some people hate curved displays, but I truly don't mind them if they're done right. And I think this is done right. And I guess I'll say it makes the phone easier for me to hold. Although the S23 Ultra is a wider phone overall, I do feel that they're both two-handed phones anyways. On the back of the phone, they both have very large camera clusters. The iPhone's looks a bit more cleaner and more contained, and the Galaxy for me just looks like a bunch of circles at two different sizes. The iPhone lenses do stick out more, but that doesn't bother me since I use a case 99% of the time. The iPhone's display is 6.7 inches and S23 Ultra is 6.8 inches. Over the years, the iPhone has done an excellent job at shrinking the bezels where the front of the phone is nearly bezel-less. And now there's a dynamic island up top instead of that notch. And I like the dynamic island. I think it's pretty cool that more apps can access it. And it's like another element of the phone that you can utilize, which I actually love. The S23 Ultra has even less bezel being shown, and the camera is just a little dot, which gives it a much more sleek appearance. As far as brightness, both phones can get very bright. On paper, the S23 is actually brighter for most conditions, but the iPhone peak brightness with HDR is brighter. But in my real testing, I have not seen a difference. For me, it's all about usability outside. And both phones do just fine. I can use both phones no matter what the brightness looks like outside, no matter how bright the sun is. They both are pretty much the same in that instance. I do love how I can tune the Galaxy screen a lot better in software to make it look exactly how I like. Whereas on the iPhone, all you can do is toggle True Tone off and on, and that's about it. Also, with it being only like a little dot up top, that it does make the content much more enjoyable to watch compared to the dynamic island, which can get in the way when watching full screen content. I do understand why it's a full island up there instead of the little dot, since it houses Face ID, which I absolutely love, but visually speaking, the S23 takes the cake, and then once I can tweak it to make it look exactly the way I want it to look, yeah, S23, better screen. Speakers is another thing that I like to do because when I listen to music, sometimes I just play it on the phone speaker. So here's a quick test. Let me know what you think. Let's talk performance. Obviously, both phones are super fast and performance is going to be no problem for both phones. It's been like that for several years now. So for me, performance isn't all about a measurement of speed. It's about tasks and doing things how I work. I'm very impressed with the iPhone. I've used it for editing videos, photos, and other high-end tasks that many people may not do with the phone. At CES this year, I used only my iPhone to shoot, edit, and upload my content, and I had no issues at all doing it. The iPhone feels snappy, from sun up to sundown with opening apps and switching between apps and, getting content out there and uploading is just a actual workhorse. The S23 Ultra, I will say it feels like a faster phone overall. I just can't explain it. Just the fluidity when going between apps and opening apps and just using the phone just feels faster. And it just has this snappy response that I don't feel with the iPhone. I feel like the iPhone is very smooth, but the S23 Ultra is just moving. It's fast, it's snappy. And then we talk about gaming. These phones are fine-tuned and optimized for gaming to the point where they play the game to the best of ability at this point. There's not a game on mobile at this time that I know of that is really taxing the phone to the point where it's like I can really see the difference between this phone and this phone. If you have high-end phones, you're gonna be locked at 60 frames or 90 frames depending on the specific game. This portion of the video is brought to you by Caseify. Although both these devices are made from some very strong materials, I still use a case. If you haven't seen what Caseify has been doing lately, you're definitely missing out. They have so many unique, fresh, fun designs, and you can even upload your own design if you want. My favorite is the impact case. It protects your S23 Ultra very well with a combination of style and protection. As you can see, all the edges are protected all the way around, and they have air cushion corners that protects it in the event of a drop. You have 8.2 feet of drop protection, and it also is rated for 4X military grade standard. All the buttons are covered and still provide a decent amount of feedback. Now, one thing I like is that the S Pen is nicely protected, but you can still access it pretty easily when you need to use it. They also have a tempered glass protector with 9H hardness that I had to install day one. With these phones costing so much money, you should definitely protect your investment. And Caseify is a great way to do it. Hit my links down below to pick yours up, and also a big thanks to Caseify for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now, let's get back to the phone. Just looking at the back of the phones, you know that cameras are a big deal. And they say 98% of new photos are taken from a smartphone. So for those reasons, let's do a deep dive into cameras. So on this photo right here, I would consider it medium light. It was during the day, but we did have a window on this side right here. Now, if you see the light coming in, you can see where the Galaxy sort of brought in more light, and thus you get, a more vivid image right here, looking at this flower pot. The top photo sort of looks a little dead, whereas the bottom photo has more light, which in turn makes this look like a better shot. I would say as far as realism, these flowers are not this dull, and I would say these flowers are not this bright. So somewhere in the middle is what an accurate photo would look like. The iPhone couldn't grab in enough light for the shot that I went and just snapped, and the Galaxy brought in a lot more light. The shutter took a lot longer on the Galaxy as well, and that's something we're gonna see throughout this video, that the shutter on the Galaxy is gonna be much longer as it switches to night mode a little bit more aggressively. So a little bit more of the same here, where the iPhone really just took the shadows and kind of embraced the shadows, where the Galaxy sort of knocked out some of the shadows. So it kind of has this argument, what makes more sense, something more realistic or something that just looks better? If both of these images were posted on social media, I would most likely say this one looks better because it's more bright, but at the same time, as far as accuracy, which one would you rather look at? Okay, here's an example. I would say this is low light. There's no other lights coming in. And let's take a look a little bit closer. All right, as you can see, the Galaxy, in my opinion, is retaining more information and is not kind of getting muddy. As you can see here on the iPhone, this area underneath the P sign is pretty much gone, whereas you still can make out some detail underneath the P sign here. And I'll say overall, both photos look very similar, but as you can see, the wood right here is showing a little bit more detail. It's a little bit brighter. Once again, the Galaxy is grabbing in way more light in these shots, but it is taking longer to take the photo too, so there's kind of a drawback on that. So here's an example where, in my opinion, it's reverse. I actually like the iPhone's image better. I think it retained the color a lot better in that room compared to the Galaxy. Taking a look at the floor, you see the iPhone kind of keeps the floor dark, which actually fits the scene a whole lot better, whereas the Galaxy sort of brightened up pretty much everything. It does a great job doing it, but I kind of feel like for this photo, the iPhone grabbed the scene a whole lot better, and I think the iPhone's image is better overall. Okay, in this example, I like the iPhone's image better. I think when you're looking at the sky in the background, I think it has just a better feel to it, where on the Galaxy, it sort of feels a little bit hazy And I don't know, I just feel like the Galaxy's image right here is a little bit overprocessed compared to the iPhone's. I think the iPhone just captured the scene a whole lot better. Now this is kind of an unfair advantage, but we have the 3X versus the 10X right here, and you can see the zoom levels are completely different. And then right here, when it's zoomed in, it actually kind of grabbed that brightness and you can see the words in white, whereas this is sort of like kind of muddy in a shadow, which doesn't have that same look. So there's definitely a big difference when it comes to having that extra zoom lens. And when we zoom all the way in, you could definitely see a big difference here as far as the quality, the brightness, and just the zoom. But once again, bigger zoom on the Galaxy, so that is no surprise. Okay, here's the ultra wide lens kind of shooting down a hallway here. I really like the iPhone's image just a little bit better, especially when it comes to like showing other light. You can see the iPhone really has that brightness in that image where the Galaxy sort of just like grabs it and just washes it out. And in my opinion, I like how the iPhone really depicts the scene just a little bit better than the Galaxy. I think both images look fine. I feel like the Galaxy is a little bit on the cooler side than what the image actually looked like. And then once again, showing off that zoom level, the max optical zoom. Just, you see the big difference here, whereas the iPhone sort of got halfway down the hallway, and this right here is all the way down to this candle or whatever's on the desk. So there's definitely a big difference there when looking at zoom. Okay, more of the same here, a picture of this tree. And you can definitely see here, the iPhone lost a lot of details in the tree, actually is even a little bit blurry, whereas the Galaxy brought in more information, brightened the scene. You can definitely see what this is. Now, as far as accuracy to what it actually looked like, it's quite possible the iPhone looked a little bit more accurate, but once again, when you're taking photos with your phone, you're gonna post them on social media. What looks better to the eye is most important for a lot of people. Okay, here is a photo at a restaurant, and the iPhone has a very dynamic and sort of a moody shot, whereas the Galaxy just brightens everything up. When we punch in, we're gonna definitely see that the Galaxy retains more information on the image, but you can definitely see how light it is. I can assure you that the scene was not this light. Every single time the Galaxy does switch over to this night mode when you're in a lower light situation. And then taking a look at this light here in the top, you can definitely see that the Galaxy just kind of like filtered it out, whereas the iPhone maintained sort of what the light looked like. So that's very important. Another example here of sort of a shot of these lights right here. And I think this scene overall, the iPhone just kind of captured it better once again. The Galaxy sort of has this hazy filtering over lights, which doesn't look too great. I double checked my lens to make sure my lens wasn't dirty, because that's something you'll see with dirty lenses, but the lens was clean, and then you're comparing it to the iPhone, which doesn't diffuse that light at all. And I think it once again maintains the scene a whole lot better. Okay, here is an outdoor shot of me. This is gonna be portrait mode, night mode, portrait mode. And taking a look at both images here. Now for me, I think both images are very similar as far as like how it actually looks and the feel and the mood of the scene. I actually don't have a problem with either of them. When you start punching in, you're definitely gonna see that the Galaxy does have a better image overall, because I can punch all the way into my face and you can see the quality is a lot different. It is much more clean when you're punching into the image all the way. Now when punching all the way in, this is definitely pixel peeping, but you can see more details on the jacket on the Galaxy. It is just a higher quality shot. And once again, this is just the default setting on the lenses and just snapping the photo. I actually gave it to my wife, just had her take the picture, not doing any type of crazy adjustments or settings like that. One thing I will say that the Galaxy kind of grabbed in this warm light that was to my right, left side here, there's sort of a warm light coming off the building. And that warm light was pulled through on the Galaxy pretty well, but the iPhone didn't pull through that warm light for whatever reason. So this next scenario of photos is what I consider the death of smartphone cameras. This is a backlit scene where we have light coming from the backside, which casts a harsh shadow, which makes it really hard to show. And in these examples, I truly feel that the iPhone did a much better job. Now this image right here looks very dark, but that is what the scene looked like. And Samsung really was trying to brighten this up as much as possible. So let's kind of walk through some of these photos. What you're gonna see is that the Galaxy was actually bringing in so much light that it started casting like a ray of light in front of the object. This was consistent through all the shots that I took. And you can see the iPhone just did a very great job at bringing in these images nicely. It really did a good job. Even when there was harsh lighting, it really didn't do anything crazy. It didn't cast any funky shadow or extra light. It always gave me a good enough image to be happy with the way it looked. Now, when I sort of moved away from that light, as you see here, the Galaxy did a much better job, but with that harsh lighting in the background, the S23 Ultra just really struggled with those photos, and whereas the iPhone did a much better job. So here's a low light scene from both phones with video. I'll play them both and let you, come up with your own decision, and then from there I'll kind of let you know what I saw and kind of give you my opinion. Okay, so in my opinion, I really felt that the Galaxy kind of gave me a more cinematic look, whereas the iPhone had kind of a cell phone look. It looked really good though, don't get me wrong, but it did feel very cell phone-like, but I did enjoy the look on the iPhone a lot. So if I posted both these videos to social media, kind of in reverse what I was saying about the still shots, that I think the iPhones would look better, but the Galaxy felt more cinematic. So now this next example, we're gonna put on HDR, which should give you more dynamic range, and we'll take a look at both cameras. Okay, so kind of more of the same in my opinion. I felt that the dynamic range on the iPhone HDR did look better overall. Now you can definitely see in these back spots that it is much brighter on the Galaxy once again, but I think overall that the iPhone looked better. So if we kind of punch into where these glass bottles are, I say the iPhone has more detail, has more color, and it looks better. The Galaxy is just much more cool. It's definitely a more moodier look, looks more cinematic. I would say with the iPhone, it retains the color better, where the Galaxy has more detail, but just sort of loses the color when we're talking about HDR mode. This is HDR mode, but the same was true when looking at the standard videos as well. All right, portrait video on S23 Ultra, cinematic video on iPhone 14 Pro Max. Let me know what you think between the two. How does it look? How does it sound? It is like 40 degrees today in Michigan. The iPhone and Galaxy both have modes that are very similar. One is called Action Camera, that is found on the iPhone, and Super Steady, which is found on Galaxy. As you can see here, they both work really great. I am actually impressed with both of them. To me, there isn't a big drop off with one versus the other. And then one of the last things I want to talk about is the 200 megapixel sensor on the Galaxy. 200 megapixels is a huge number, but one of the things that I found it to be most exciting is that when you take a picture of something, let's say a large object, let's say you're at a landscape, being able to punch in and see significant details without having to go through the zoom lenses is what I found to be really nice. Here is a really cool example. And then when we punch in, we can actually see Alcatraz Island and actually make out some of the objects there. Having a static image of that with that much quality to punch in and see things miles away, now that right there is very impressive. I will say both phones, you should not worry about battery life. And for me, I think that is the main point. You know, I'm a heavy user. I can easily take a 1 hour Zoom call during the day, or even make phone calls, or a marathon of scrolling through TikToks, or maybe shoot 10 minutes of video. At the end of the day, I am using my phone, right? I am using my phone a lot. And you know, when it's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, that's where I look at battery life. And you know, I can expect to be at 30 or 20% if it's been a hard day on both phones. The advantage I will give to the Galaxy is its charging speeds. It charges so much faster than the iPhone. If I'm about to go out for the night, I can plug in the Galaxy while I'm getting ready and take a shower, and most likely I'll be at 80% if not maxed out. On the iPhone, the charging speeds are much slower for me. I do like there's MagSafe on the iPhone, which is convenient, like using a MagSafe power bank, but it's still pretty slow. The S Pen isn't a tool I personally use. However, there is a subset of people out there who absolutely loves the S Pen. And for those people, having this included in the actual phone is huge. It does perform very well, giving you the ability to sign PDFs and mark up documents easier. And the iPhone doesn't support an Apple Pencil or any sort of stylus. I guess the point I'm getting at is that either way, you truly can't go wrong. You know, Samsung's ecosystem has made a turn and it's positioning itself to be the best phone for business with Microsoft Suites, Knox, and other enterprise solutions. You know, for me as a creative, I feel that Apple has more on that side. You know, many apps I use are iOS and it only works best on iOS still. But as a phone, the S23 Ultra is better. There's no questions about that. But ecosystem and being familiar is very important. If you're starting off with no devices, I say that Samsung has a compelling offering for everyone. But what Apple does is if you have an Apple product, they wall you into the garden, and then that's what happens. It's very hard to get out. And those are my thoughts on these two phones. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Take care.